Hey, what's up, y'all? Mack Garrison here with Dash Studio, and we've got another round of speaker interviews for the Dash Bash, and I'm joined by Kirsten Knoll. Kirsten is a Los Angeles-based managing executive producer heading up the award-winning creative production studio Scholar, with extensive experience working with top-tier, industry-defining brands. She is passionate about design-driven and multidisciplinary narratives. Her diverse portfolio has brought her around the world from Eastern Europe to Central America, with production expertise in the full gamut of pipelines, including live action, design, animation, and VFX. What does Kirsten not do? Welcome to the show, Kirsten. So glad to have you here.
Thank you for having me back.
Of course. I don't even know if this is a podcast, it's a vidcast. Some people are listening, some people are watching, but yeah, super pumped to have you here. The amazing work that you all do at Scholar. We're so pumped to have you at the Bash, ready to jump into this.
Thank you. I will keep this here and say I'm not cool, so I don't know what's called either. And that's my initial plug for why you should come and see me is I'm super not cool.
Come see me talk.
Hi.
I'm not very cool.
I'm not cool. I'm not hip. I know this about myself. No, I have no idea what to call it. I feel like...
Well, I love it. I mean, honestly, we're all kind of a little unhip and kind of nerdy to be in the creative and motion design animation space anyway. You need to be a little quirky. So I think, honestly, it's apropos and fitting for us. So
it's true.
Yeah. Maybe we can just jump in it right off the bat. I'd love for you to give a little bit of background on kind of how you got into this space. I'm always curious, what are some of folks' earliest animation memories, production memories, and kind of how you got into this space?
So that's a great question to kick it in with. So let's see. I am an artist by trade. I've always been into art ever since I was little. I feel like I did all the things, to be fair. Music, dance, drawing, all of it. My poor mother running me everywhere.
Running you everywhere. Always going to the store buying different things, basically.
Exactly. She's like, please stop. Not really. She's actually both my parents, very encouraging of the arts. My sister is also an artist, a producer as well. So I feel like that's the constant question too, is like, how did we end up with two producers? No one else in our family has taken a creative path. Like, it's like we have attorneys and that type of thing. So
that's so funny.
Took a hard left.
Does the family at least understand what producing is at this point? Like, have you had enough Thanksgivings that they get it? Okay, that's
great.
Yes,
they do for the most part. My mom's pretty good, especially my mom, about, no, this is actually what she did and this is what she made. Very, very proud too. Always texting me, did you make this one? And then I'm like, yeah, Mom, I did. Or no, we didn't. And then she's like,
You're like, no, we actually lost that bid, Mom. Thank you.
And she's like, oh, well, it was done well. And I'm like, yeah, okay, cool, rub it in. But no, so I went to art school. I went to SCAD in Savannah, Georgia. And I loved it. When I first started up at SCAD, I wasn't sure what I was going to major in. I was really into graphic design, and I've always loved animation. So I ended up, I think it's like by your end of your first year, you have to pick your major. And so I ended up doing animation. Traditional 2D cell animation was what I decided I wanted to do with my life. And then as I was there, I think I at one point added on the graphic design minor. And then at some point along the way, they created a new major, which has changed names twice now. So I'm going to use the old one, which I think is like very long. It was like motion media design, some extremely long, so many characters.
Really set y'all up for success when folks could name the major.
Yeah, really flowed. But I remember talking to some folks and they were like, it's like graphic design, but it moves, which also is like, yes, but no. Early days, pioneer days of what we do now. But I took a few classes and I was like, oh, I like this. So that's kind of when I tapped into the motion design side of things. So I ended up double majoring. I spent 5 years there, which, I loved every moment of it. I really did. I'm still so close. I still get to work with so many people that I graduated with, that I was in class with, that I, friends of friends. So it's like, I love that part of it too. Just seeing us all out there doing it, just like succeeding. Yeah. Good job, all of us. High five. We're art kids that got jobs.
Honestly, you're way better. My graduating class, I don't know if half of them are even in my field, to be honest with you. So you're already off to a great start having peers that are still in here.
Totally right. I know. We're crushing it, gang. We're crushing it. I will not say what year I graduated because I'm not trying to date myself. But
you just by the fact that you're describing when motion graphics came out, I know that you're my age at least, because I feel like I was a founding member of whatever they were calling motion graphics.
Whatever it was. I said I'm not cool, and I said I started at the beginning. Yes.
Yeah, sell it really hard here, Kirsten.
I know, doing a really good job. But no, so I was at SCAD, and I I did that. I graduated and I got an internship out in LA. I knew that. So I grew up in South Jersey. I had interned in New York at Nicktoons, which was so freaking fun. Had a great time there. Feel like that's still like, childhood dream check.
Sure. Yeah.
I also did an internship with a small animation festival at the time called, is that even at, oh my goodness, I'm going to blank on the name. I'm blanking on it entirely.
That's all right. Was it like it was pre like F5 or something like that?
Yeah, it was like super, super, super tiny. I want to say like Bill Plimpton was one of like the members of it.
Nice.
So but that animation show, the animation show. They
nice.
did a couple years, so I interned with those guys. Super cool. So many amazing. Mike Judge was one of the founders of it too.
Fun. I love that.
So great stuff there. So I'm like, you know what? I grew up Northeast. I've been in Savannah. I want to go out to California. I need to get to warmer weather. That was my goal the whole time. Just keep going south. And then again, bang that hard right. We're not being a lawyer. We're going to be an artist. We're going to go to LA. So I go out there for my internship and I'm at Digital Kitchen, which at the time is, DK. They are making Emmy Award winning show series titles. We're talking 6 Feet Under. What was it? True Blood, like all that stuff. So LA office, I start working as an intern there as a designer. And I'm like, I hate this so much. Not DK.
Sure, of course, but just like the grind. Yeah.
Because you're in school and you're grading, and that's like, it's so cool. So, you're doing these peer reviews, and they're just like, no, like make what you're feeling, and then that's not the real world.
No, there is production timeline, stuff has to get done, and you're having the real world of deadlines.
There's typesetting, it's like there's things that you just have to follow the rules. You can't be like, sorry, AT&T, I actually don't like blue, so I'm just gonna not do that. It's like
yeah, right. I actually don't want to work on this project. This one doesn't sound that fun. It's like, okay.
So yeah, but I was at this amazing creative studio. At the time they had 4 different offices. Chicago was the hub. I was in LA. They had Seattle. They had New York. They were doing so much cool stuff, and they were doing new things. And I was in a working studio. I feel like that's like the hardest step out of college, right? Is like getting your foot in that door to really see how this stuff is happening. And so I let that internship end. I think I did a good job. I did, and I got hired not as a designer.
You got the job, which honestly, coming out of school, that's really what you're going for.
So yeah, I was their studio manager for a few months before I went into production with them. So that's when I actually started production, was as a coordinator at Digital Kitchen. And it was a combination of right place, right time. There was a need. They were starting to get into way more live action interstitial work for AT&T at the time. This really cool branded content. They would go out and do all these crazy things like with hosts, and we'd be going to Sundance, or they'd be going to the Bahamas to swim with sharks and do this behind the scenes there, like just wild stuff. And I was just like, how is this someone's job? Like, what?
You're like, did I win the lottery? This is the coolest gig ever. Yeah.
But I also didn't know anything about production when I was at SCAD. I just, when I thought of producing, I thought of, okay, you have to be making a film or a TV series, and you have to have money to do that, right? It's like you're bankrolling this, which isn't even, I think, still technically the case. I didn't know that you produced commercials. I didn't know that you could do this other thing. So my eyes were really open to this whole other world inside of, motion design, really, animation, effects. And I was lucky because I had some really awesome folks there that needed the help. I'm very, very proactive human, still am, still try to be, but was asking questions. And, I would do my studio manager stuff, but then I would say, hey, how can I help you? This is cool. How do I learn about this? How do I do this? And then I was doing it well. So they were giving me more of that. And then ultimately, one of my coworkers at the time made a kind of play. She spoke to the studio head at the time, the MD, and was like, hey, we kind of need this person. We're doing all this work. There's a ton flowing in.
Went to bat for you, basically.
Went to bat for me. Exactly. It's like, she's already doing it. We like her. Like, what do you say? So I kind of got to slide in and just get into production.
How fun. Do you remember those early days? I feel like, talking about SCAD or going down to Ringling or some of these other schools, you talk to these students, and there's always this sense, I feel like, of a worry of like imposter syndrome. Like, gosh, I don't know what I'm doing. Like, am I going to mess up? You're in this kind of new role. You didn't really have that much production experience, any production experience prior from that.
Yeah.
How did that kind of go in the early days? Did you lean on asking the folks around you a lot of questions? Were they more accepting? Like, look, we know you don't know what you're doing, but you're a good person, so we're going to help teach you. Like, how did that kind of initial interaction go?
I think it was a combination. It's so funny because I feel like the folks that I know who are producers, right, who have found this path, and they have all different backgrounds.
Sure.
It's like I think no one's really been like, oh, I'm going to go to school to do this one thing.
Right.
But I think we all have similar traits in our lives and our personalities. So, it's like I've always been very detail oriented. I've always, taken, for me to even just go grocery shopping, it's like a very thorough note list of
There's a
things.
list.
It's like,
Are you the type of person that will arrange a list based on the aisles too
yes,
to make sure? Of course.
it's categorized. Yes,
Of course.
absolutely. 100%. I got to have a strong flow through that store. I got to get in, get out,
That's
I
right.
got to prioritize my time to get through and hit my deadline to get to my next store, or to get home so my baby can nap at this point.
Right.
But yeah, so it's like, I feel like we all have these similar traits, right? So I did ask a ton of questions though. If I didn't know how to do something, because there are like payroll, booking
Oh
talent,
yeah.
like things like this. It's just like, I could really mess something up and it's not worth it for me, I don't think for anyone to try to solve that on your own. I think there
Mm.
are things where sure, it's like I could look up X or Y. I could look at an old call sheet and say, this is how they do this.
Sure.
Look at an old pre-pro book and say, okay, great, this is how they organize it. I'm going to follow this because they have a system in place where, oh, maybe this could be a better system at some point.
Right.
But, there's things that you can do by just paying attention and looking at
Mm.
those examples ahead. And then, yeah, asking the questions, because ultimately, if I do it right the first time, it's easier for everyone.
Right. You're
So
setting up a plan of action to continue to follow, and you're not
exactly.
having to self-doubt yourself then in that instance.
Yeah.
So it
Because
sounds like basically the
yeah,
word of wisdom for anyone getting into a new gig, even if it feels like you're a little uncertain, just ask questions. And if you're in a good place, those folks should be supportive around you.
absolutely. It's helping everyone to teach you how to do it correctly. And I say correctly, loosely, because everywhere is going to do it different too. So
Sure.
it's like, the way that I learned to, because also the thing with Digital Kitchen and that type of production was I was actually going from animation, design and all that into live action production,
Oh
something I
yeah.
had never done. I never took a film class at SCAD. I had never been on a set, I don't think. Like, that was my first, like, oh, wow, okay, we are doing this for, a commercial on TV.
That's
So there
right.
was a lot of learning. Eventually learned how to bid in that world too, and how those rates and crew needs are different, even still, non-union, union, DGA,
Hmm.
like the whole
Hmm.
gamut. But yeah, so I think just the questions, they're so important, and we all
So it
ask.
sounds like when you were a DK, you had this really great support. Folks who want to see you succeed, folks who are championing you, and that's got to give you the confidence to feel like you know what you're doing. So you get in full time with them. It sounds like, right? Someone goes to
Mhm.
bat for you. Was it a next step that led you over to Scholar? How'd you end up over with them?
So I ended up being at DK for about a year and a half, and I was coordinating that whole time. I think it was just a combination of seeing what else was out there. Just the company while I was there also had shifts. That's a very normal thing. I know it can be scary coming out of school maybe and seeing, what you get into a studio, a large, small, an agency, a brand, any of it. But there are a bunch of protocols, and it's very natural for places to expand, to contract, to, people to move on, people to do that. So some of that was starting to shift. They were downsizing a little bit. I had been there a beat. I liked what I was doing, but wanted to also see what else was out there. So I
Sure.
did eventually end up kind of going freelance for a beat.
Nice.
And I will say I prefer staff. I have mad props to the serial permalancers out there. Like,
Sure.
I just, again, it's a production thing. I think I love the structure of knowing my
Yeah.
day so much. I just do better in it. And that also took me a minute to figure out. I'm glad I
And
freelanced.
do you think that's the
But
big difference just for folks who maybe are even considering moving freelance? What do you think was the big difference between a freelance producer versus in-house producer?
I mean, I think you get to choose a lot
Mm.
more of what you are working on. It's like if you're on a staff, for many reasons. One, we know your skill set, right?
Sure.
To your point, our job, my job is to find those opportunities
Yep.
for not just my creatives, but for the producers too. If someone has a really strong background in effects, but they've never done anything with live action and they really
Mm.
want to learn that, I want to try to find a job that combines that so they can learn that, and they can grow. and they can ultimately become a better producer because they know more.
Love that.
So yeah, I think it is important to offer that up. And I got totally lost in what we've been talking about.
Oh, it's fine.
But,
well, I just sent you on a tangent because I was curious, because they're talking about producers in-house versus freelance. And so we were talking about, you were freelancing a bit, but ultimately it was like you like being grounded in-house. That was your preference. You recognized right away that you liked that structure. So it sounded like you moved on from being a freelance producer and was looking specifically to get in-house somewhere.
Correct. Yes. And I'm sorry, I got lost in my own sauce there. But
no, I think the sauce is an interesting thing. Look, my job, I'm going to send you off in orbit and then we'll just bring you back around for
Thank
the
you.
goodies.
Thank you. Reel me back in. But yeah, no, I think it's that combo. It's being able to pick, having a little bit more choice in what again, depends on the studio, but ultimately, ideally having a bit more choice in what you're working on. And I think it's also just the community aspect of being a part of a studio. It's like I've been a scholar for, I think I'm coming up on my 10th year. And,
that's amazing. Congratulations. That's no short feat,
10 years.
That's wild.
Wild. But it's like, that's for a reason. It's like you see people move around and it's all different things. It's growth. It's, maybe just not a fit for how you are and operate culturally, a bunch of stuff, new opportunity just in general, like to do something that you never thought you'd be able to do. But, so yeah, I think it's that combination there of the structure, the community, and then also just, being able to kind of forge a bit more into your growth and where you want to go.
I love that. And honestly, it's a good segue into a question I had for you. I mean, so clearly with this background of freelance, in-house, and just the time and space that you've been in the industry, and you've just seen a lot of change. There's been a lot of change in our industry, even in this short period of time. I'm curious, as you look back kind of over this decade of experience or so, what are you looking forward to? What gets you excited about the future that we have for our industry, and maybe where are some points of concern that you have?
That is such a good question. So Max sent me some questions ahead of time because he's a good person. It wasn't just like, surprise, here's questions. And I was like, dang, this is going to be a tricky one. And here we are out the gate early up to get into it.
That's right. Warms you up here for the first 10 minutes or so.
No, like, now here. But seriously, it is a really great question. And you're right. It's like, I will say, I do feel like maybe not the ground level of motion design of this industry, of this community, but pretty early days into it. It's like it was only just recently made a major when I was getting ready to graduate. It's like, sure, there were studios out there for me to go to that were starting to implement these skills, but it wasn't what you're seeing now and, what's out there in terms of our massive community and all these amazing studios across the world that are just specifically doing, straight motion graphics versus, mixed media design, animation, all that stuff, mashing it all together. I think what's exciting is all of those new voices. And I think especially too on the scholar side, it's funny, I was just talking to Krista, who's so amazing, who's just my guiding light in marketing for all of us. We don't deserve her. But it's, we were just talking, I was like, 10 years at Scholar. It's like, even at one studio, right? Like seeing our voice change from fledgling, they had been around right before I started. We're going to be 15 this year. So,
wow, amazing.
Which is also, holy cow. But seeing how we even, talk about ourselves shift so much in 10 years, right? So I think it is seeing all those new voices out there that are strong, amazing, powerful voices. I think it's seeing that community expand and support each other. It is something where, be it, there's all these niches, right? You can find your person. It doesn't matter if you're introverted, extroverted, if you're into this one thing or all of these things. It's like, I feel like within this community, you can find your counterparts. And we are this band of misfits. We really are.
Oh, 100%. I mean, I feel like motion design in and of itself is kind of an amalgamation of so many different backgrounds,
Totally.
There was this guy, I remember I was in school, and I think his name was Edward Tufte. He was this graphic designer. He organized data sets, basically. But one thing he mentioned that I really liked was this idea of a capital T theory. You start in one place, and then you get to a point, and there's a branch off, right? So maybe it's like, oh, I love graphic design. Oh, interesting. Here's motion design. I love motion design. Oh, you know what? Maybe I'm a better producer. Let me produce, or let me actually become a creative director. And so you start to connect all these T's. And to your point of just being a collection of misfits and all these different backgrounds, as problem solvers, as creatives in our industry is so varied that you're right. You can always find another counterpart who's similar to you just because we are so diverse and have so many different backgrounds.
100%. And I think too, even the diversity side of it, it's like, me starting out, like I don't think I knew of like 2 female creative directors who are still out there crushing it, like, but it's like even that, right? Or it just, in general, just like the folks that are kind of stepping up and have been, they might have started out as designers, but now they've been doing this for 10, 15 years. They are the creative directors, and it's like, while there might not have been that same availability of mentorship, and that is a huge responsibility, right? It is to kind of guide and help and be there for that next generation of folks coming up. There's more of that now across the board, and not just, with women either, just, everything. And that is so amazing to see, just such a blended community too.
Yes.
I don't know that you see that everywhere.
No, I totally agree. And
So
I think
amazing.
there's so many, to your point, we just have so many more people in this space than we ever had before, which is amazing, right? Because now you've got all these different voices, all these different perspectives, which we desperately needed for a while, because that variety is ultimately what makes the variety work so great. I bet there's a handful of people that are listening to this, though, and they're saying like, yeah, that is all great, but it also means it's more of a crowded space than ever before. How the heck do I get into this? I'm curious from your perspective, students are always asking, how do I get on a studio's radar? Or how can I break into the industry? Thinking back to some of those early days when you first got in, or even folks reaching out to you today as an EP, what are some things that have stuck out, or any advice you could give to someone who maybe wants to break into this space? Like, what are some things that they could try, or you're like, what, I think this is successful if you gave this a go?
Well, I guess there's a couple things, right? First and foremost, it's something like going to the bash, right? Like, that is a great way to connect with you. But for real though, it's like you wanna meet up with working industry professionals across the board, right? Like, we're all coming from different backgrounds. We are staffers, we are freelancers, we are owning studios, we are at studios, we are leadership, we are ground level. So it's such a mix. So talk to people in real life, ask them, meet them, make a connection, follow up on that connection. It's like having that FaceTime is so important. And I feel like, those are the people even now that I still connect with more. Is like, I've had that one-off about, oh, this ramen spot in Austin's amazing. Like random things. But I'm like, yes, Austin ramen. You know what I mean? It's like this
That's
weird.
Great. Austin ramen, you're my go-to now for all illustration projects, right?
But it's true. It's like it humanizes it so quickly. And I think that is something that we just have to remember. It's we're all seeking that, no matter where we are at that level of connection. So the bash is a great way. If there's studios that you love, I mean, when I was first getting into it, again, I tried the internship thing. It worked out. I think interning right when you're graduating can be a great gateway, because then you are open, right? And internships are not a guarantee that you're going to get hired somewhere. They are for both the intern to figure out, do I like doing this? Do I like this studio? Does it make sense for me and who I am? And then for the studio to also think of those same things, and it's not always going to be a match, and that's totally fine. It's part of it, but I think finding that internship opportunity out the gate, out of graduating or getting ready to graduate, so that you kind of can get that foot in the door. I sent a bunch of cold, even when I was in between.
Cold emails. Nice.
I'm not a cold caller, but it's like, and they weren't just like the same blanket template, where you could tell the name. It's like, take a minute to like think about what you want to do.
Oh yeah. And we're all human. Like, everyone loves like a pat on the back. Like, hey, I really love this piece of the project, or I love what you did here,
And it means who you're talking to too. It's not just blanket like, hi, I have done this and I would like to do this. It's like, you're not a robot. So I think, it seems like, oh, no one's going to answer. I will say I do really try to answer when people email me. I will take time when I can to talk to people who are getting ready to graduate, have graduated. I would like to say I'm a pretty approachable person. I remember what it's like to not get a response and just like, dang, really hard.
Yeah, it's awful. It's like, look, I'm a human on the other end of this, right?
Yeah. And it's like, I can't answer every email ever, right? But it's like, I do try when I see that, when I can see that on the other side that they've tried. And a big thing too is like, know who you're reaching out to. If you are applying to a job, right? Like, and it says send to jobs at whatever with this subject, follow the directions.
Oh, sure. Right. Just the simple things.
Don't email everyone. Don't email PR, jobs, the 7EP. Just email jobs and put the subject in and put, because it's like, that is the first, and spell the person's name right.
Oh, yeah.
I get a
Look,
lot of Kristens
I
out
bet as a
there.
Mac, I get Matt, I get Mark. I've seen it all.
Well,
You know,
and I know I work with a Mac who I love, who's an MAC. I'm a Cully, and I was
yeah.
typing you a response to say, "Hey, thanks, excited to chat." And I had the MAC, and I was like, "No, Kirsten, wrong Mac. Get that K in there." But it's true. You know, it's like I get a lot of Kristens. I'll be honest, I don't respond to the emails that say "Hi, Kristen" because that's not my name.
Oh, 100%.
So it's
100%.
like,
I'm the same way. It's like,
all
especially
direction.
if it's, you know, especially on the new business stuff, I'll get people reaching out all the time trying to sell me something, which I get. And I try to give everyone, you know, the time of day. But it's like, if it looks like it's just templatized, you just copy and paste it. You don't have the ability to spell my name right, or you're totally off on the market on what I even do. You know, it goes back. The key takeaway, I think, for anyone listening is authenticity. Just be genuine on however you're doing it, and meeting in person still matters, especially in this digital world where I think we're all saturated with digital content. That in-person meeting is so important.
Yeah.
You know, one question I had for you, just as we were talking, I was thinking about this, is, you know, so interesting with a producer role. I remember I was a creative and I was an animator, and I felt like I was pretty good. And then very quickly, as I started to kind of grow, I was like, you know, there are better people at this than me. And that's kind of when I think I started to consider taking on more of a producer and then eventually an EP role, because I was like, well, I'm good with clients. I'm good at managing time and getting stuff done. I'm curious from your perspective, who's now been producing for a while, you know, what are some of the key attributes that make a good producer, or someone who's listening is trying to aspire to be an executive producer? What advice would you give them?
So, I mean, that's a great one too. I would say, you know, the details, listening, communication, like the biggest part of my job is communicating, right? Being able to clearly communicate, being able to break down hard conversations, having hard conversations too, you know, especially EP role. It's like, you know, we get feedback sometimes, or, you know, something might be going off the rails, and being able to talk to your team and also talk to that client in a way that makes everyone still feel confident in what they're doing without completely, you know, ruining the mood, to help pivot that shift is so, so important. Strong communication, just showing up and caring. Like, I'm sure we've all been there. You're on like a dailies or a call, and someone's just, you know, we all have bad days, right? It's like, you don't know what's going on in someone's life. You have no idea. It could just be whatever. But, you know, just showing up and caring and wanting to be there goes so far, and can really help shift the whole mood of that team for the day too. You know,
There's a balance, because you're trying to navigate client relationships and creatives. So you're kind of this middle ground. It's like, look, I got to protect our creative team, but I also got to get what we need to get done for the client, and kind of being able to massage both those directions where appropriate is important.
Yeah, no, 1,000%. And it's, I think, being able to read, you know, a really good producer, I think, an NEP at a production too, can read and adjust how they interact with someone, right? So it's like, depending on which of my creative directors I'm talking to, you know, I might have a different tone or approach, or, you know, just how I come to them with something, because I know that's how they do better with receiving information. I know that they need to talk it out versus like, you know, okay, let's just get into this. Same with clients too. It's like, you know, I tend to be a very, very emotive emailer. I love an exclamation mark, a smile. Sometimes I'll
Exclamation mark, period. Exclamation mark, period. Right. You got to get the balance in there.
Let's pull it back. We've got like 4 smile faces in here. Let's just like tone it down. But there's some people I talk to where it's like, that's just not how they want to talk. And so, you know, I mirror that. You know, I try to make myself as approachable to them in their process.
Yes.
And I think, to your point of being genuine and authentic with that, I'm not muting down who I am, but I'm also allowing them the space to show them that I can meet them there. And I'm not going to necessarily like make them uncomfortable either with how, you know, being like, they don't want that energy.
No, 100%. I feel like it's one of those things that, and we were talking a little bit about this, I think, right before we started recording, that, you know, the best practice for becoming a good producer is just to continually put yourself in those situations where you have to navigate it. There isn't always a go-to solution. And sometimes you have to improvise and come up with something and set a standard yourself because you're not sure the answer. And that's okay. I think all about producing, the people who really know what they're doing, air quotes, is just because they've been in the space for a long time and they've had those different experiences. So it's a mixture of kind of reaching out and talking to other folks, being comfortable, having uncomfortable conversations. How do you practice that? It's probably just going through it, all the different scenarios, and just trying to get, like you mentioned earlier, internships or get in early at a place to kind of learn from the people around you.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's the best, you know, that's the best way to do it, is just get that actual experience. And I will say too, it's like I'm a little, is I'm like, I love staff. The one benefit back to freelance, right, is like popping around to a few places, you can see how a bunch of places do it, right? You can see maybe I'm better in a boutique setting versus a larger setting. Maybe I actually want to go into feature animation and don't want to do commercials at all. But I will say it's like that is the benefit of freelancing, is a bit more of that, seeing a wider net of styles and approaches. Yeah, I mean, with producing, it's like there's no secret handbook. There's no, it's like
right.
There's days where, I mean, there probably every day, honestly, it's myself managing EP, and I've got a senior producer and another EP that I work with who I just like, I adore. They are the best. I could not
You got to have those charrettes, be able to talk it out and work through it. Like, how would you handle
peeps,
this?
They are just like, but the number of days that I will come to them as they're managing EP and say, hey, I made this reel and I feel like it's super wrong. What am I doing? And they're like, oh, did you think about this? Like, that's how it should be. It's like I have expertises, but I'm trusting my team around me too, and also, rely on what they're great at or what they might be seeing that I'm not thinking about. So I think, it doesn't mean just up, closer to the top that I don't have people. I go to those around me still.
Oh yeah. 100%. Having that little community around you, having some core people. Honestly, even my wife, Molly, I talk to her all the time about things. She's not even in my industry, but it's always just good to get opinions on various things. I think something that our industry, just thinking about opinions and making decisions, it can be a stressful place. I mean, it is a stressful industry. Stuff needs to be turned around really quick. There's last minute asks, there's tight deadlines and big pressures and big deliverables. And so something that I've seen creep up more and more often is burnout. I think everyone in the creative space, whether you're a student or have been in this industry for 10 plus years, has navigated burnout at some point in their life. I'm curious from your perspective, as that's creeped up in your life, how do you navigate that? Any tricks that you have found when you feel like, gosh, I'm feeling a bit burned out?
I mean, I think you totally, it exists everywhere, every industry, I think too. The big one and where I notice it, boundaries, I feel like that's a thing that has become more of something that we all talk about, right? Is like boundaries and setting them. But yeah, this is a job and you have a life outside of this, right? So it's twofold. I work at an amazing studio with amazing people, but I also need to make space. And for me to do my job well, I need to have that clear headspace. So if I don't, I can feel myself maybe getting shorter, maybe not thinking things through, maybe making rash decisions. And so stepping away for a minute, taking a mental health day where I just read a book, trying to get outside and go on a walk, having defined working hours, not saying that you email me after 6:30 and I'm going to kick you to the curb,
right.
But it's like really trying to uphold that and also trying to look out at that for other people too. So it's like a bad habit I was getting into, right? Is like, I would be like, okay, I'm trying to be on Slack from 9 to 6, right?
Sure.
And then I would, as I've reevaluated my boundaries with a new baby, because that's a whole other fun journey. I had boundaries. I was doing really great. And then,
Then Daisy came in.
Daisy came into the scene. Yeah, it was like, yo, what's up, Mom? I'm a toddler. My rules. Right. And I was like, cool. I got this. But I'm currently actually trying to refigure out what are the boundaries that I need to show up for her, but also to show up for my studio and for my people, something I found myself getting into the habit of because I was kind of shifting how I was working just to do, it's like, I joke, she's like my elder baby. She goes to bed at like 6:30. I'm just like,
oh my gosh, I love that.
Like, you're not even getting Blue Plate special. But, it's like we're working at that time. So I have to step away to do, I do step away to do dinner and bath time and get her ready for bed. And I come back and I was finding myself sending these like Slacks like later. And I'd be like, Kirsten, you're breaking the rule that you set for yourself. Like, why are you slacking people at 9 p.m.? That is just straight rude. So I've been trying to really remind myself so I can like get it out to schedule my Slacks, which is such like a simple, silly thing to say out loud, right? Or schedule my emails. But
it helps everybody because not only is it helping you kind of temper expectations of what should be done in a day, but you're also alleviating your team members because, as their manager or boss, if they're getting a ping from you, I'm sure you're like, oh, they could be in the middle of dinner. They see a ping come through. Do I need to go respond to that? So that planning is helping them as well.
Yeah. So it's exactly. And it's like, and I remember what that's like too, being like, I probably should respond to this email. And I think that's the other thing too, is like, I say it a lot to, I feel like way too many people, but it's, deadlines are important, right? It's like there are times when we are delivering a job and it needs to go out that day because that's the day we've all chosen. And there
Right.
are media buys and there are things like that, right? Like if we've promised we're going to post, we need to do that. We need to follow through. I'm not saying you should just disregard all that, but what we are doing, I'm not out here saving lives. So if that Slack can get answered the next day, it's probably nothing that pressing. If it really was, I would call you, I would text you, So I think it is giving a little bit of grace to yourself. That's another thing I'm really working on right now is giving myself grace. I feel like I try to give grace to others, and I'm trying to give myself a bit more grace this year.
I love that. It reminds
me
me of
hard on myself.
Yeah, it reminds me of like some Brene Brown quote, right? Where it's like, I think it's Daring to Lead, maybe. She speaks about how, look, you're in the arena, you're doing best, you're showing up. We are our own best critic, or sometimes we lean into what the critics are saying, when at the end of the day, it's like, look, you can only do so much. You're doing the best you can with the information you have, and you're moving things forward. Perfection inhibits progress. I'm doing my best, and we got to give each of ourselves a little bit more grace accordingly. So I think that's really well said.
Thank you.
Well, let's see. We're coming up here on time. Maybe we can leave it here on this last question, just thinking about, for those that maybe haven't been familiar with you or Scholar's work until this conversation, and thinking about the Bash coming up, what could they expect from your talk at the Bash? What do you have any early inklings of what you might be hitting on?
Oh, I know. That's another, I'm like, I have a lot of ideas that I need to condense into an idea. But no, I do want to talk about the importance of our community and the voices in our community. I do want to talk about things like mental health and boundaries, and how you can't be successful unless you are helping yourself first. I want to talk about just that larger connection as a whole, across what we all do, and how inviting all that inviting all these different people, and just makes us better. It's like we've been talking about this being a more crowded space right now, right? And it's like, it's interesting to see these studios that do amazing work, even like kind of like reinventing how they do it, like Tendril and Builders Club and Future Deluxe creating this like merge thing.
Yeah.
Hit this, or like, Buck with Giant Ant or Residency. It's like, I think that even though we compete, I think it's like helping others. And in terms of what you're going to get, I think this is a pretty good example. I am a human to default. I feel like I'm like, my hopefully slightly fun, but also like, I don't know what I just saw energy. I mean, Mack has seen me talk once before, and I just, I don't know. This is just who I am. I just try to be a genuine, authentic human. I'm a little bit out there in a fun way, I hope. And, I hope you guys enjoy.
All right. I think that about does it here with Kirsten. So glad that we got to talk today. We got to chalk it up and talk today. This has been so fun. So pumped to have you at Dash Bash this summer. And if you haven't gotten a ticket yet, what are you waiting for? Now's the time. You know how great Scholar is. You know how great Kirsten is. You know how great the Dash Bash is. Let's do it. Let's get hanging out.
Thanks, Mack. I'm super excited. I can't wait to see you guys in Raleigh.